What's up, guys? F Dot here. With the SPL coming up, I figured I'd toss out my predictions out there one more time as usual, because why the hell not? As always, your boy is presented by Into the AM, dope clothes, dope discount, and I get some of the proceeds as well, as long as you use code F Dot. So please do that and help everyone out. The first game of the season, the split, the whole big bang is Envy versus Randazzo's. Both these teams have drastically different lineups from the last time we've seen them, to be completely honest with you. Envy last year was sort of like a group of players that came in and had a lot of potential. Now it's sort of like a new squadron led by PBM. PBM is sort of testing his I don't know, leadership knowledge with these guys. I'm pretty excited about it in general. We can see PBM and Oceans. So Envy goes ahead and grabs one of the up-and-coming rookies, Oceans. I think this is a very good duo lane. Kiki will be playing mid, Skeelan on the jungle, Cyclone's been in solo. So Skeely's got a lot to learn, but has been learning already. And Kiki is generally okay. He's a solid all right. I don't think Kiki is ever going to, like, you know, surprise the world with his skill set, but I think he's a solid okay, and surrounded by players like Oceans who can be that star power, surrounded by people like Cyclone Spin who can be that star power. I think this roster will be okay. I don't think they're going to be super good, but I don't think they're going to be the same shit show that happened last year. They'll be going up against the Dozos. You've got Ghost just Ghost, all right, sweet. Ghost and Wubbin, Maswal, Mirage, and Walrus. So these guys are a bunch of rookies, a bunch of nobodies, and all they can really go is up because there's no real opinion on them. Walrus is a fantastic player. He's proved in the last year that he's one of the most improved players, and he wants to play with these guys. And that is interesting. Basically, Walrus will be playing here. I know he's friends with these guys. He might be playing down, meaning that he might be a better player than the rest of these guys. In fact, that's probably the case, judging from what I've seen out of Wubbin and Maswal. They're pretty average. Walrus seems to be playing below his skill level, which, if he's playing below his skill level because he believes that this roster and these guys can become better through practice, experience, and time in the Pro League, I respect that. And I'm excited. If he's playing below because these are his friends, it's a little bit rough. I think Walrus can easily get on a better team should he just decide to do that. I think Walrus could walk onto a high-end team and just be like, yo, sir, what's up? But he's stated in the past that he has no interest in doing that. He likes his squad. He wants to stay with this squad. And I hope it's for the right reasons. With that said, I don't know enough about these dudes. Nobody really knows enough about these dudes to really say this team will go 24-3, right? There's no way that you could really call that. So, I don't know. For me, there's a lot of question marks on these guys. Wubbin has been a continual underperformer from what we've seen in him in the SPL and SPL-related activities. Maswal has been pretty sweet. We saw him in relegation. But nothing too outstanding from these guys outside of Walrus. I think going up against Envy, they actually wound up losing this one 0-2. So I hand this one over to the boys on Envy. I think that Envy has a lot of potential, and Randazzo will just be the first team that they take down. Denial is the same squad that you know from last year. Very similar, well, the exact same situation with a couple of changes in the jungle and the mid lane. I actually think that this was an improvement. So you've got the core of Shattuck, Vedium, and Benji. Hooray. Shattuck and Vedium, I think they make a decent, fine dual lane. I think that Shattuck is an innovator. I think that Vedium is a average to above average hunter. Vedium has his moments where he's very good, but in general is pretty all right. I think when you look at somebody like Benji, his career speaks for itself. He's a very good solo laner. Herwin and Homie FA coming into the mix is less about the individuals and more about, I think, this team in general, how these three guys react to having Homie FA and Herwin on the squad. Herwin and Homie FA are historically very, like, their emotions matter, and if they're going to get shit on by the team, it's not going to work out well. As far as raw skill, raw potential, Herwin, I think, is still learning, still getting better, but a fine mid laner. Same thing with Homie FA. They'll be going head-to-head with the new Allegiance. Allegiance lost Oceans, got Venenu. I think this is an even swap. Hot young rookie Hunter gets replaced by hot young rookie Hunter. No change. Incon, hooray. MLC Stealth Edition here, along with Cope, is different. Cope, similar to the guys on Randazzo's, Cope is a big question mark. I listened to a podcast, and he seems like a cool dude. I've seen him play some Smite, but we don't know how he will react on the big stage. Knowing that he's poised weekend, I don't think that nerves will be too much of a thing, but of course, who knows? We'll have to see. MLC Stealth as well, seemingly on like his last team possible. Good for him. He's been streaming a little bit more. I hope that means he's been practicing a little bit more. MLC Stealth has, I think, fallen from where he once was. I don't think that Stealth is one of the best mid laners in the game anymore. Is it possible for him to reach that level again? I'm sure. I won't say I'm sure it is, but I don't think it's out of reach. Stealth is a smart dude. Stealth knows how to play the game. I'm not like, So with this ALG roster, is it better? Is it worse? I don't know. I do not know. I think losing Lazes is a big deal. I think losing Maddie is a big deal, but judging how Cope can come in and fix that will be interesting. I'm not concerned with the loss of Oceans because Venenu is kind of like the same idea. So I think that this Allegiance roster is more similar to the old one than people are ready to give it credit for. So Allegiance going head-to-head with Denial. I actually think this one winds up being a hot split. I think that Denial and Allegiance are very similarly laid out in that Denial have a new mid-jungle synergy to work through. Allegiance have a new mid-jungle synergy to work through, and some other talents as well across the team. I think that these teams will be better later on in the season as opposed to how we see them today. So I think this one goes 1-1, split down the middle for these two guys. Realistically, I think that everybody winds up dialing down the middle, and there's really nothing too out of this world for these two squads. Soar versus LG. Haha! This is probably the first real spicy pick because a lot of people have a lot of faith in what LG can do, and I am lower on that faith. I'm lower on that faith level, I think, than a lot of other people in the Smite scene. Soar, on the other hand, Soar will have a warm-up phase in that I think in general people can agree that Soar got better, right? I mean, very rare can a roster exist, and this means no shade at Herwin and no shade intended thrown at Herwin and Homie FA, but publicly speaking, Millard, thank you for the love. Publicly speaking, how much can a roster be affected negatively by adding Andinster? You know what I'm saying? So with that in mind, I think that this roster is theoretically a better team. Andy and Snoopy get along well. Baskin is Baskin. Jigs, Met Yankee. This is a top tier lineup. We've seen them at DreamHack. We've seen them at LAN, and they didn't do too well. So they swap out Homie FA and Herwin, two players that I think are adjusting. I think Herwin is still adjusting to big stage play and still learning to be he's still on his way up. I don't think he's reached his potential yet. Andy had a troublesome spring split. if we view the spring split as a slump for Andy and assume that fall he'll come back with a vengeance, I think that this is an obviously improved lineup, even though the swap from Heroin to Snoopy is a downgrade, and the step from Andy spring split to Homiefe is a side grade. I think if Andy is back to his old form, you have to say this is an improvement. But I think this team will miss Heroin more than they realize, and will have some hiccups along the way. With that in mind, I think this winds up being a split this time. LG have Denial's old mid laner, Xeno. They still have Mask, Scary D, Barrage of Hitler. This is a very average lineup. This is an average lineup. I think a lot of people see Barracuda and Jeff Hindla, and maybe even Mask and Scary D, and say, oh man, this is a top tier team. They're going to Worlds. I'm not sure. This team, Barracuda and Jeff, already missed a LAN. And I think coming into, as the season goes longer and longer, I think that people and fans have to sort of come to terms with the fact that these guys aren't top of the crop, or this team, I should say, isn't top of the crop. The guys on SOAR, a little bit closer to the top. With that said, I think LG intelligently abused Snoopy in this matchup, and I think because of it, the first one winds up being a split down the middle. Later on, as the season gets longer and SOAR wind up having more practice, I think this SOAR LG matchup leans in SOAR's favor. But week one, fresh off the bat, I think Luminosity are able to identify what SOAR need to work on and come back on top. Enemy versus Eager. Another high-end matchup with teams that are very close together as far as their individual skill is concerned. Enemy, I think, had a lot of people guessing or questioning things once upon a time, but not really the case no more. Everybody really understands that Enemy are the real deal. Panda Cat, Pain, Chaos, Shattered, Marauder, nothing has changed. Shattered changed his name for the 37th time. Who gives a shit? But these guys, still the same squad. Still the same people to be afraid of. Eager as well. Same squad, same guys to be afraid of. Enemy has had more practice in the offseason. Enemy went to DreamHack. Enemy did well. Enemy went to Epsilon Invitational. Enemy did well. Enemy's been scrimming. Enemy's been practicing. Eager have not been. Similar situation to what we saw earlier on. Later on down the split, I think this winds up being a little bit closer. But for now, I think this... I never want to count Eager out because they have a lot of star power and a lot of... like this intangible idea of Eager can just go off. There's no stat to back it up. It's just... Eager can just go off, and I will always need to respect that. But I think the fact that an Enemy has had so much more practice since the spring split versus Eager, like I said, multiple lands, multiple opportunities on the big stage. I think Enemy is just a little bit more warmed up for this matchup. It goes in their direction, but don't expect these to be short games, folks. These are going to be long, big shots. It's going to be tough. We're moving to Europe, and we get to see some of our newer teams, which is actually really fun. Cyclone GG, which is a real organization, and Fantastique, which, I mean, it's certainly a team, but it's not an org, right? These players aren't backed by anything. The logo makes me want to hurl. But it is pretty much the old guys from Myrmidons, Les Mimodons, Les Bruce Brothers, Germain, Dardez. They even got Mogao in the solo lane. But they're paired up with Nulissa and World Edit, previously known as Jiffy. I have a lot of faith in Nulissa to grow during the season. Right now, I think she's a middle of the pack mid laner. I think she can see some growth. I think we could definitely see some growth. So we'll see that. World Edit and Jiffy. Zap, I hear you making fun of me. We'll see what happens. Nulissa and World Edit are pretty much the two. Jiffy's not new, but I feel like Jiffy's new to this squad because the three of those guys are from Myrmidons, right? This is interesting, and I don't know how it's going to work. I have never liked Mogao in the solo lane. I don't think it worked out. I don't think it's going to work out. Mogao got figured out last time. I don't see anything different this time. Jermaine and Dardas always do decently. Nulissa, we'll see. She's a rookie. Jiffy, I think, will do better with Nulissa and everybody. I think he's a little bit more comfortable. But this team will have to... We'll see what happens. New split, new feels. But we'll see what happens when it comes to the solo lane. They'll be going up against Cyclone, that said. It was my job to update this, and I did update this. And that's annoying. But in any event, this is Colossus' team. These guys, Colossus, it's a bunch of newer folks. And strictly because they're newer, I give this one over to Fantastique. Again, we'll see how this team grows. LOL, I need to fix this. That's my fault. You can actually blame me for this on the website. I must have clicked the wrong player buttons. But... Colossus, I think, needs some time in the oven. Fantastique have a lot of fumes to run off of, and I think that this one goes to Fantastique. Dignitas versus the Leftovers. Again, a matchup from last year that a lot of people should remember their picks from last year. These teams are more similar to what they were last time around. Arkle, Dark Dodo, Cherry Onika, right? Like, these guys are the Leftovers. They switch out Badger for Murder, which is an upgrade. These guys were... I had high hopes for these guys until I stopped seeing the passion in Badger's play. With this change, I think that could be a big deal. Team Dignitas, they've moved Suntouch to the Hunter role and brought in Big Man Tings. Ducky in the solo lane, I think, is the big acquisition here. How do he and Frostiak work out together? I'm not too positive. We'll have to see how that works out. Shadow Nightmare is still one of my favorite mid laners. We'll see how Suntouch adjusts to the Hunter role. I loved him in support. I thought he was excellent in support. I thought it worked out fantastically. Nika's not a girl. I like this lineup. But I am cautiously excited about Frostiak and Ducky working together. With the Leftovers, on the other hand, these guys, again, very similar situation. I think it's possible that Leftovers comes out of the gate swinging. Dignitas might need some help sort of catching up. Thank you so much, Phil Picks. So we'll see how that one works out. I give this one to the Leftovers. Because, no, I'm kidding. I think this is a split easy. But I think the Leftovers have the potential to surprise a lot of people. So, if you want to be safe, mark your FP sheets with split. But I really and truly believe that Leftovers have what it takes to 2-0 this match. And I'm going to mark that. That'll be my pick. All right? That'll be my spicy pick. I really do think Leftovers can beat up Dignitas. Hungry for More versus Cringe Crew. Look, Hungry for More didn't do shit at DreamHack. That sucks, but I don't think that's indicative of their style or their skill level as a team. Cringe Crew, they've replaced their solo lane. Zashu is officially replaced by Zeros, who's in a new spot. This is a good team, not a great team. Hungry for More, I think, are better. I think Hungry for More wind up on the good side of this one as well. So, HFM, I think Ataraxia has earned himself a 2-0 here. Panthera versus Dignitas, I mean, come on now. Or, what is that? Panthera versus Paradigm, I mean, come on now. Realistically, Paradigm's the only team that I would think twice about. But even still, come on now. Hungry for More versus Fantastique. Listen, if Hungry for More are going to beat Cringe Crew, they're certainly going to beat Fantastique. I will be watching this one heavily. I want to see how well Fantastic does against HFM, specifically against the whole mid-jungle synergy thing. Because Fantastic with Jiffy, or World Edit, excuse me, and Ulissa, that is something that has to be nurtured and looked at. And I want to see how well they do against Pretty Prime and Twiggy. So this will go to Hunger for More, but how much so is a different question. Panthera versus Dignitas Panthera. So, for the very first week, Panthera gets auto wins, I think, as teams sort of get back into the swing of things. Don't forget, Panthera is another team that has practiced over the past couple of months at various lands. Regardless of how much time and effort they've put into them, they've been doing it. Dignitas, they've been practicing off-land, blah, blah, blah. Panthera just a little bit more hot. Paradigm versus Cyclone. Colossus has all the secrets. Paradigm has no, that's not the case. Paradigm wins. Cringe Crew versus Leftovers. Very evenly matched up here. If I believe Leftovers can beat Dignitas, I believe Leftovers can beat Cringe Crew. Again, be safe with your FP. Go ahead, select split. I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm really not. But I think Leftovers are going to be a surprise team this year. Seriously. I really do think Leftovers are going to surprise a lot of people. And I think last year they were supposed to, and Badges just sort of stopped giving a shit. This year, I think they absolutely do. I think they absolutely do. Badges not here to stop giving a shit. I think this is a good lineup. I think they surprise a lot of people. I really think they do. Soar versus Envy. Envy maybe one day, but Soar wins this one. I'm trying to think of the two different lineups. Because Envy with the new leadership, I think, has a lot of chances in matches that might not have been considered. That's also true. Somebody in chat, I am nude, says in chat that Dodo being back in his mid lane position is a big move for Leftovers. As we look back at these rosters, Soar with Snoopy, Andy, Baskin, Jakes, and Bet Yankee. And Oceans, PBM, Kiki, Skilon, and Cyclone Spin. I think this is closer than I initially stated. Soar go on earlier in the week against LG, and I recommend a split. I think LG and Envy are kind of evenly matched right now. This is a tougher one to call, in my opinion. I think that Soar is the more tenured team. Envy needs to practice a little bit, needs just some more time. You know, week one is a rough week to come into. Like I said, Enemy versus Eager. I only call this Enemy over Eager because it's week one. And Eager haven't been to the lands that Enemy have. As the season gets later and later, I think that this becomes a split, and maybe even Eager supersedes or takes Enemy's spot away. But week one, it goes to Enemy because of the offseason has been shorter for Enemy. They've got more practice. I think the same can be said for Soar versus the boys on Envy. Envy has been restructuring and finding a new roster. Soar swapped out a jungle and a mid. Like minute one, they stopped playing, and they've sort of been back at it. So I think Soar takes this week one. Expect Envy to get better throughout the season. Enemy versus Denial, I think Enemy takes this easy. Eager versus Randazzo's, I think Eager takes this very easily. And then LG versus ALG. I think these two teams are extremely... I think they're extremely well matched up. Zam, I'll talk to you in a second. I think these guys are extremely well matched up. I think that Luminosity and Allegiance wind up being two very similar style lineups, despite people, I think, wanting to put Luminosity a little bit higher. Barracuda and Jeff Hinla, I think, are still top-tier players. Barracuda specifically. Mask and Scary D have proven that they're good. And Xenotronics is a fine mid-laner. Neither superstar nor somebody you want to get rid of. Just absolutely fine. Take a look at ALG. I think it's a very similar situation. I think that Weekend is good. I think that Venenu can be great. We'll see what happens. I think his position with Oceans is fine. Incon is a fine mid laner. MLC Stealth MLC Stealth is a little bit of a question mark, but in general a fine player. And Cope is a question mark. We haven't really seen him play at all at a high level. So I am cautiously excited about Allegiance, and I think that Luminosity has a widespread amount of talent on their team. I think this one winds up being a lot of fun to watch. And I think when it comes down to it, this one winds up being closer to a split than anything else. But Luminosity might have the edge. There's a lot of question marks on Allegiance's team. Venenu looked very strong, but will it translate? How does he play with this squad? Who is Cope and how will he do? Will MLC work out on this team? There's a lot of question marks for Allegiance, whereas Luminosity I think we have our answers. I give this one to LG, but I'm going to vote split to be safe here. I think that these are easy lineups to really compare and contrast. I think these are easy lineups to compare and contrast. And they wind up being evenly matched. Throughout the season, I think one of these teams will excel, and one of these teams will, I don't know, what's the polite way to say crash and burn? I don't think both of these teams wind up succeeding. I think one of these teams do, just given the landscape of the North American Smite scene. I wish them both the best of luck. I think both of these teams would be a lot of fun to watch. But we'll see how it winds up. So just a recap of week number 1, Envy versus Randazzo's. Both these teams coming in with hot, fresh new rosters, but I got to give it to Envy. They've got a little bit more superlative in their roster. Denial versus ALG. I think that these guys are evenly matched, and this is one of the easier splits to call. Soar versus LG. I think Soar winds up being a better team than Luminosity in the long run, even in the short run. But I think that Soar have some things to work on right away with specifically the mid lane that Xenotronics and Mask can sort of abuse. So I think that Luminosity has the card for Soar in week 1, and as the season continues, Soar will get better and fix that issue. Enemy versus Eager. Expect this to get closer and closer, and maybe even in Eager's favor as the season comes on, but Enemy has had a lot more practice on tournament and off tournament, on the record, off the record, than Eager has over this off season. So I think Enemy a little bit hotter because of the practice they've had. Fantastic and Cyclone, both two of the newer rosters. Fantastic, a little bit more put together than Cyclone, I think, at the beginning. We'll keep an eye on this one specifically. Leftovers versus Dig. Put split if you want to be safe. But I think Leftovers are going to surprise a lot of people this year. Hungry for More versus Cringe Crew. Zeros is going to be a good addition to CC. But at the end of the day, I think Hungry for More, a little bit better of a squad. Despite not showing up in the whole online thing, or in the whole LAN thing, I think that Hungry for More are ready to make a swing in the fall split. Panthera versus Paradigm. Panthera for week 1 should always be your bet. As the season gets on and on and on, maybe things change. But the choice, week 1, always bet on Panthera as they go up against Paradigm. Paradigm has been the only team to really compete with Panthera, but even still, I think Panthera winds up on top here as Paradigm gets some momentum throughout the course of the regular season. This might change to a split, but for now, it is definitely Panthera. Hungry for More versus Fantastic. This is a perhaps a surprise top-end team, but a top-end team nonetheless versus a brand-new squad. Sorry, folks. Panthera versus Dignitas. Again, sorry, folks. Cringe Crew versus Leftovers. Vote split to be safe and love your FP. Vote Leftovers if you believe, like I do, in the Leftovers. Soar versus Envy. Again, I think Envy has a lot of potential this season, but week 1 is not where you reach your potential. Soar is a better team at the moment. Enemy versus Denial. Not a lot of conversation there. I think Enemy just flat out is better than Denial as a squad, even with the changes. Same thing with Eager and Randazzo's. I think Randazzo's is a hell of a lot better than they were last year, mainly because they're question marks instead of thumbs down symbols. But we'll see how this team develops in the future. I think having Walrus on the squad is a big deal, and we'll see how they develop. But for now, Eager's obviously going to take them to the bank. And then LG versus ALG, two evenly matched teams. One will survive throughout the regular season. Right now, it's not my chance to take which one will. It's a split in between. Those are my picks. Do the YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you. And watch the Twitch.